Margaret had known hardship for as long as she could remember. After her husband passed, and her only son moved far away, she lived quietly in a crumbling little flat at the edge of town. Each day was a delicate balance, a little food, a little warmth, and a lot of silence. One freezing winter afternoon, Margaret walked to the market, her thin coat no match for the biting wind. In her purse rattled a few small coins, barely enough for bread and milk. As she turned a corner, she spotted a little girl sitting alone on the cold stone steps of a closed shop. The girl's feet were bare, her dress ragged, her small hands wrapped tightly around herself. Margaret slowed, torn by instinct and fear. She hardly had enough for herself. She needed every coin. But when the girl looked up, Margaret saw in her eyes a deep, silent kind of pleading, a desperation that no child should ever know. Margaret's hand found the last coin in her pocket, warm from her body, cold from the world. She knelt stiffly, ignoring the pain in her knees. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked softly. The girl hesitated. "Emily," she whispered. Margaret pressed the coin into Emily's tiny, frozen hand. "It's not much," she said, her voice breaking, "but maybe it'll buy you something warm." Emily clutched the coin tightly, her wide eyes filling with tears. "Thank you, miss," she said, barely above a whisper. Margaret smiled faintly, patted her head, and walked away before the sorrow overwhelmed her. She did not know then that she had just changed her own life. 2 months later, winter had only grown crueler. Margaret, thinner and weaker, ventured out one evening for medicine. Snow drifted across the empty streets, and the wind howled like a wild thing. She hurried through a back alley and slipped. Pain exploded in her hip, and she crumpled to the ground. Gasping, she tried to move, but the cold seeped in, heavy and deadly. "Help!" she rasped into the darkness. But no one came, no one until small, rapid footsteps. Miss, are you okay?" Through a haze of pain, Margaret saw a young girl bundled in an oversized coat and scarf, and recognized her instantly. "Emily!" "It's you," Margaret gasped, tears pricking her frozen lashes. "Don't move," Emily said urgently. She pulled out a cell phone and called for help. Minutes later, an older woman with kind eyes and strong arms arrived, covering Margaret with her coat until the ambulance came. At the hospital, Margaret learned the full story. The coin Margaret had given Emily that day had bought a roll of bread from a bakery nearby. The kind-hearted owner, Mrs. Hawkins, had seen the girl eating alone in the cold and, after hearing her story, had taken her in. Emily had found a family, and tonight she had seen Margaret lying helpless in the snow and had saved her life. When Margaret was ready to leave the hospital, Mrs. Hawkins and Emily visited her with an offer. "You shouldn't live alone anymore," Mrs. Hawkins said warmly. "Come live with us." Emily threw her arms around Margaret. "Please," she said, her small voice trembling with hope. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. After so long, after so much loneliness, she had a choice again, a family again. "I'd love that," she whispered, holding Emily tightly. They moved Margaret into a cozy room above the bakery. Days filled with the smell of fresh bread and laughter replaced the long silence that used to haunt her. Margaret taught Emily to knit. Emily taught Margaret how to laugh again. On cold nights, they would sit together by the fire, wrapped in blankets, hearts full. And every year, on the anniversary of their meeting, Margaret would slip a shiny coin into Emily's hand with a twinkling smile and whisper, "Kindness is a magic that always finds its way home." And Emily would squeeze her hand back, knowing it was true because she had lived it.